Your work environment is where you will be spending several hours of your day.
So in this episode, we're actually going to walk through strategies you can use to set up your work environment to support you.
Are you frustrated by a lack of momentum in your business? Tired of putting in long hours doing what everyone says you should and still not making money? Sounds like you're ready for Lifestyle Builders. We'll help you get back on track, taking action, and seeing results. Head over to joinlifestylebuilders.com today to get started. And this episode is actually kind of sort of based off an episode we did a while back when we had the Serial Startups podcast. And we talked about it in a blog post as well, I believe.
Yeah.
Which was talking about the evolution of our own home and work environment over the years.
Which is pretty funny because we'll post up a link to that blog post at the show notes page at tomandariane.com/108. But we actually went through the progression of our home office. And I remember when I put the picture up for the first one, it was terrible. Like I had papers all over the place. Like it was just a mess.
I think you were sitting with a laptop on like a TV tray.
Oh yeah. Like it was terrible. And well, at that point we had started our real estate business and I had I think on the wall, there was like a map of different house locations, but you just see how messy and disorganized it was. And it was like a spare bedroom in our house and we weren't parents at that point.
Correct.
Then when we had Elena, our first child, we
needed that room.
Yep.
For something. Well, and our sister moved in as well for a short time. So we moved
Elena into the office. So then we had to move our office into the other spare bedroom.
Yeah, no, it was a mess. And then we've since gone through another evolution. So you'll see pictures from the blog post of the evolution where we built what we called Megadesk. And even since then, Megadesk has had a slight shift around and we've moved things around based on the fact that now we both work from home. And that changed some things too.
Absolutely. So I'm excited to get into this episode because you might see it just as well, like how do you set up your office? But what tends to come around when you go through changes like this is actually a lot of the emotional things, so this is going to be a really cool episode.
Very much in the mental space.
Especially because when you look at this, and you guys will hear it as we talk about it, you don't know by now, Ariana and I are very different.
What?
And when we approach stuff like this, usually we have night and day thoughts around
very
how it should look.
Differing opinions.
Absolutely. So really what we're talking about here is decluttering. Is this there's been a movement over the last handful of years to have less, focus on the things you like, this minimalism movement.
And recently, even more so with Marie Kondo's show becoming really popular on Netflix and everyone's decluttering like a crazy person. But the trend has been there before the Netflix documentary came out. And it's always been this thing where, people are trying to figure out how they can live with less, work with less, or at least have less distraction in your life overall.
Well, I was going to say, I think you hit on a key thing there because if you look back, well, it's not even 40 years anymore. It's 50 or 60, I guess now. But if you look back, things used to be simpler. And then over the last handful of years, consumerism came up. We got more connected with things like social media. And a big thing I've noticed when I left the workforce, actually, I did a post on this the other day, how I've really been cutting out traditional or mainstream things and really getting rid of anything that doesn't serve me, and it's made me a ton happier. But I think it's so easy, especially when you're surrounded by it and you're surrounded by a lot of people that have the same mindset, to get caught up into wanting more, to get caught up into consumerism.
Well, it's a little bit of that herd mentality, you have to keep up with everybody else in the herd. So it forces us to buy things we maybe shouldn't be buying because we can't afford it, or buying things maybe we don't need, but we have to keep up appearances on social media because that's just what society tells us these days. And this minimalist movement has kind of come barreling through, and a lot of people who were sick of that herd mentality and I don't want to have to keep up with everyone else, I want to find a better way, have kind of tagged on to that because it's given them a better way to step out of that cycle of always buying the newest thing and having the best upgrades and, buying the newest cars and just everything.
Yeah. Well, and, it really comes down to like quality over quantity, and I think that's the way that I've always been, but I shifted away for a long time where, there was like a lot of stuff. And then ironically, I don't like clutter. So the more stuff we have, the more clutter builds up, and you have kids. So I've noticed that the more we've decluttered physically, and then for a lot of people, decluttering mentally, like not being on social media all the time, not comparing yourself to other people, and truly taking time to think about what makes you happy in doing that. And I think that's why so many people are following like Marie Kondo or this minimalism movement, because they're like, oh, if I strip away all the stuff that isn't nearly as important, I get down and focus on what is really important.
Yes. And the reason we're talking about that in your work environment is because it's really, really tough when you go from working in your job environment to coming into your home. And many of us don't necessarily have a separate space to have our office, quote unquote, as entrepreneurs. So, you'll see a lot of people that are like, oh yeah, I'm living the laptop lifestyle and we're working from the couch and, I can work from wherever. And that's something that is like they're striving towards. But then it also is almost it's almost a detriment in some ways, because you go from having a desk, like a, what's the word I'm looking for? Dedicated work environment. Yep. You have separation from, okay, I'm home and I can do whatever, or, oh, I'm at work and I'm working, to being an entrepreneur. And that line gets very, very gray in between those two things, especially if you don't have a dedicated work environment.
Yeah, well, and, and we talk a lot about integrating life and business. And, there's a lot of benefits to that. But one of the things that can be a slippery slope is that when you integrate them, but you don't have that separation, boundaries, it feels like you can never step away from one. So, for example, when you're trying to enjoy life, but everything around you is business, or it can be a notification on your phone, or it could just be your house and your environment is business, it's tough to turn business off and get into life. Or if you're trying to do business and you're doing it in the living room and the kids are there, now it's tough to get your business stuff done because life keeps coming up. So a big part of this is when you design your work environment to be separate and give you some of that division, it now makes it much clearer in your heads to say, I'm in life mode or I'm in business mode.
Yes. And I'm just going to point this out because, again, Tom and I have different views on this. And that's because we have very different personalities and it looks different for us. So, example, we used to work right next to each other. Our mega desk was 2 desks basically connected in the middle. And that was each of our own workspaces. And we were good with that. That was our work environment. We never actually worked together in it, or very rarely did we work together in that space.
Because I was consulting and I was out at client sites.
Correct.
But when we were suddenly together 24/7 and trying to work next to each other all day.
Yeah, Megadesk didn't work so well.
Your music's different than my music.
Oh my gosh, I can't deal with his music. He listens to Rihanna 24/7 and never shuts it off. And then also just the focus and the distraction level. I am a little bit less distracted by, somebody coming to the door and knocking in the middle of the day, or one of the kids needing something if they're home from school, and can kind of jump back into work and be okay. Whereas Tom has to have absolute focus. Like even me coming downstairs to talk to him for 5 minutes will throw him off his focus. So our work environments need to be very different. And that is how we have now set it up to be so. And we also had to talk about boundaries a little bit, because I like having the option to work from the couch. I like having the option to change up where I'm sitting depending on what tasks I'm doing, if I need more focus or less focus, if I want to be comfortable, or if I want to be like nice posture in a chair and sitting in front of my computer. And so I have kind of found ways to build that into my everyday, where it's like, oh, I'm doing something today. I need to focus. I'm going to sit at a table where I can sit in a good chair and I have less distractions. I'm going to put my music in so that I don't hear anything happening, and I'm going to work. Whereas some days, maybe I come home from the gym, I need to ice my knees. Yes, I have bad knees, people. And I can sit and work while I'm icing my knees. I'm being able to be productive, but I'm doing it in a way that works for me. Whereas something like that might throw Tom off because working from the couch is a totally different vibe for him than working at his desk.
Mm-hmm. You know, and some of the, like we've always known some of this, and every time we evolved our office, we would put pieces of it in. But if you guys are watching the video, you might notice that our podcast setup is different now. We actually used to have it set up in the living room because we liked the backdrop. We got this really nice like high top table. But one of the things we actually got when talking to our marriage therapist was, you know, maybe you guys need a little more separation and a little more boundaries.
Yep.
Because literally our podcast setup was in our living room and it was hard to have that separation. So we ended up really dedicating, and we redesigned our office the most recent time. We set it all up so that the office is contained. To Ariana's point, she can work out of another part of the house if she wants to, but it's not like everything else from the office is bleeding in. So we've had a much better separation between the two.
Yes. And I think that's another important point. It's going to continue to evolve.
Mm-hmm.
So you as a person, you as an entrepreneur, you're going to continue to evolve. So don't just assume that your work environment now is all you're ever going to need. It may change, and just be prepared to have an open mind as to what those changes might look like, because it might surprise you.
Mm-hmm. So what we want to do with you guys now is talk through the 5 steps that we go through when we do redesign a space. And what will be cool when you guys are listening to this is you're going to hear the 2 very different perspectives of this. So, you know, let's dive in. The process we're going to take you through, I actually got from my corporate background. You hear me talk about processes, and a big thing for processes is lean. Mm-hmm. Lean is kind of this underlying value that says, let's maximize value, get rid of waste. And ironically, lean also comes from the Japanese. So it started out in Toyota, and then it's been evolved into everything else since then. So the process we're doing is called 5S. So it's sort, straighten, shine, standardize, and sustain. So my logical brain will take you guys through this, and then Ariana's, creative brain will help then kind of fill in the gaps and what it can mean for you guys. So the first step is to sort. And I love this because I think Marie Kondo actually has the same kind of first step, mm-hmm. which is basically figure out what should be in your environment and what shouldn't. And Ariana laughs at me every time I do this. She knows when I'm in this mode because I take everything out of the space that we're trying to optimize.
We're still in this mode right now because when he did the desk redesign, he decided that not only the desk should be reorganized, but also our entire storage space that we have down here in the basement. So he mm-hmm. moved everything out, and now we're slowly going through that process of sorting.
Yep. So what I prefer to do is take everything out of the environment, which usually results in giant piles of stuff. And then what you do is you start thinking about, what do I need this environment to do for me? And then what stuff do I need to bring back in to do that? So like our desk right now, there's really not much around it. There's a giant pile of stuff over on our pool table that we're going through. Yep. But because we've had this new setup for now a couple of weeks, anything that's still left on that pool table that we haven't gone and grabbed says, hey, you probably don't need this in everyday life. So one, it probably doesn't need to be in your office. And then you start asking the question, do I need it at all? If not, I can donate it or
dump it.
Get rid of it. Or if I do need it, but I only need it periodically,
correct,
can I put it somewhere else, like our storage space, so I have it, but it's not clogging like my everyday environment?
Mm-hmm.
And so like what's cool when Marie does this with people, like the first thing she always has people do is their clothes.
Yep.
And what she does is she says, take all your clothes out of the closets, out of the dressers, put it on the bed, and then look at every item, and she says, does it spark joy? If so, keep it. If it doesn't, get rid of it.
Reminds me of a much bigger scale. Anyone watch the show Hoarders?
Hoarders, same type of thing, right?
They did it, but that was more your scale where you take out the entire house. Like, we must sort everything. I actually tend to be, I'm a huge fan of that process, but I actually like to do it on a smaller scale because to me, it feels a little bit less overwhelming when you take one piece and you dump it all out everywhere and sort it, as opposed to like an entire room or, like Tom said, an entire closet. If I tried to go through all the clothes that I owned and then piece by piece try to say, oh, this brings me joy, or I need to keep this because I wear it all the time, that would be an overwhelming task because I have a lot of clothes. But if I instead say, I'm going to go through one drawer at a time, or I'm going to go through one like all my hanging clothes instead of all at the same time, that makes the task a little bit smaller, there's more chances that I'm actually going to complete it, because let's be honest, how many of you attempted to Marie Kondo your entire clothing collection and then got halfway through and were like, this is taking forever, and you just put it all back in there? Because I'm guessing there's probably a lot of people out there that did that.
Well, and so to your point, the key thing with this sorting process is you want to essentially get 3 buckets. Things you know you need, and you keep those things, you put them in your environment.
Things you might need.
Things that you might need, and then things that you don't. So the things you don't, we can immediately get rid of and remove. The things you might need, what you can then do is put them in like a maybe pile. Sometimes what people do is they'll tag these, like sometimes they'll call it like red tagging. So they put a red tag on everything. And then when they need something, they take the red tag off and pull it back in. Anything that's left with a red tag, you don't need it.
I do that with my clothes. The trick is to turn the hanger backwards.
Exactly.
And if you, by the time you get to your next clothing sort, I usually do it like every 6 months. If that hanger's still backwards, you did not wear that item and you need to get rid of it.
Yep. So once we've got everything sorted and you've got those different buckets, the next thing is then to straighten. And this is now saying, because you have the right stuff that you're keeping, now what's the best way to set this up and organize it so that you can maintain it going forward? So this might be in your office, getting different shelving for like paperwork or for books.
Or having an organization system like binders that are all labeled, or folders that you have in a specific folder holder that is not the correct term.
But yeah, so now it's really saying, with all the stuff you have, where's the home for it, right? Like if we look at our desk right now, there's homes for like where our drinks go. There's homes where our computers go. We've got some stuff down here for
pens and Post-it notes, the printer, envelopes and paper.
So what we have around this environment is stuff we're going to use every day. There's other stuff that we have, like books, for example, are over on our bookshelves that are not immediately in the office area.
And filing boxes where we need the files that are contained in the boxes. We don't use them all the time, so they go away in the storage area with labels so that everything is where it is when we need it.
Correct. And actually, you guys can't see it from the video, but behind me, I have a couple of those wall hanging shelf things, and one is my inbox. So anything that I need to review or Ariane needs to give to me, it goes to my inbox. So now rather than things piling up on my desk, they go there. We've got a folder that says to file. So when we get done with something, rather than me having to get up and go over to the filing cabinet, I put it into file, and then later on I'll look at it. And then we've got some other ones as well. But what you want to do at this point is make sure that everything has a home, which basically means everything has a place to go. If you're doing the Marie Kondo, this is where she has boxes, right? She says put things in boxes so they're organized. If you're looking at your closet, make sure that you've got the right amount of hangers. And if you don't have enough hangers, you get more. Or, that everything's set up so that when you're done, it's all clean and the way you want it to be.
Okay. All right. Step 3. Sorry, I almost skipped a step. Step 3 is to shine. Which is optimizing your workspace.
So what we're saying now, it kind of builds off the previous thing is, is there anything that will then help you? So in some cases, for example, with our office, one of the things we started looking at was, well, what colors do we want, right? Like, right now we have this like tan type color. Do we keep this, or is there another color that we would enjoy seeing? You see behind us that we've added things in. So we have this manifesto that we've created. We actually got it printed up. Ariane did this awesome graphic. We got it printed on canvas, and it now sits behind our desk. So every single day when we look at that, we're reminded of like why we're doing these things. So this is where you're really looking to say, like, I think for Marie Kondo, this is like sparking joy. This is like, how do you make that place your place that supports you and everything you need?
Yeah, and you'll see a lot of people do that as well in the online space, like putting together your workspace so that when you sit down to work, you're in the flow. It motivates you. It calms you. It's whatever you need it to be. But what does your space look like? What does your space sound like? Maybe it's a quiet area of your home with some sound dampening things on the walls. Maybe you have a nice music in the background. Maybe you like essential oils, so you have a diffuser in your workspace. It's all about, okay, you've straightened everything, you've sorted it all, you've straightened it out where it needs to be. Now, how do you get yourself into a good place to be able to work from that space. And it might be adding other things like, oh, I really wish I had this. It would make my work so much easier, putting those into place to make everything better.
I was gonna say, like, a great example of that is whiteboards. So when I set up a space, I always have to have whiteboards around because as new ideas come up, I can be jotting on them. And then actually something we did with this space, and I told Ariana, I figured she'd probably laugh at me. Our mega desk, we still use it, but it actually used to be facing the other way. And what I did was flipped it around so that you now have to like walk into our office area. And this may sound stupid, but part of having that separation of work and life is when I literally step into our office area, I'm now in work mode. And when I step out, that is then my transition to say work mode is done and now I'm into life mode. And especially working at home, whether you have a physical thing like that, like people that do this really well have a way to transition into work and out of work. And if you don't have something like that, it can often be a challenge to say, when do I shut work off and get into life?
Yeah, and he also has a very visual blockade as well, as he's taken the bookshelves that used to be next to our desk and blocked himself into a corner here. But that's also a similar thing. Like as he walks into the office and sits down at his desk, he can't see our home. So it becomes less of that gray area between am I home or am I working? He knows now he's looking at the backs of those shelves and the things that he has on them. He's in his office.
Yeah, and like you said, I get distracted easily. So part of that too is that I'm not seeing other things that are going on to distract me. So the key thing here is you want to set these up to support you and what works for you. What works for me typically doesn't work for Ariana and vice versa. But as long as you're setting up your environment to work for you, that's really the key. Okay, so next up is then step 4 is standardize.
Now we're on step 4.
Now we're on step 4. I know you were so excited for this step.
I jumped ahead. I don't know.
So this step is, the first 3 steps were setting your environment up to be what you wanted. Now we want to make sure that we've got processes and routines and systems in place so that it stays that way.
What? More processes? Never.
I am the process guy. But this is where, like, what a lot of people do, like with Marie Kondo, right? They'll go through and they'll do that purge and everything's done. And then they take the Instagram picture and they throw it on there and they're like, look how beautiful my closet is. But then you go to visit their house like a month later. Yeah. And it's all a mess and everything's all over the place. And it's because they skipped this step. They didn't say, now how, like, what routines do I need to keep this place this way? And, you know, in a lot of cases, there might be a daily routine, right? So daily, it might be shutting your computer off and clearing off any empty drink containers that I usually have, like 10 of them.
Like 5 at least every time.
So that might be a daily thing. Weekly, it might be emptying the trash bin and like sweeping. Weekly, it might also be whatever piles of papers there are, sorting those and filing those. So what you want to do is basically say, what routines do I have to set up so that I can maintain this environment? Without that, all of this is going to fall apart and you're going to get right back into that mode you used to be in. So finally, step 5 is to sustain this. And what this really comes down to is periodically checking in, and like we do with everything else, what's working, what's not working, and then what changes do we have to make? So like you said, this is like our 4th evolution of our desk. And part of it is when we got to a point where our previous evolution wasn't serving us, we then changed it again to serve us. And it might be the same thing with any place else in your house as well, right? So you want to make sure that this is not just a one-time thing, but it's long-term sustained, which means evolving it over time.
Yes. And I just want to say too, like a big part of this is knowing yourself well enough to be able to walk through this process. Again, very different personalities. Tom has mentioned he does not do well with clutter, but I'm the person where my desk is
that creates the clutter,
absolute mess, but I know exactly where everything is in the mess at all times. And I'm pretty sure there's a quote out there about something about the geniuses in our world always had a messy desk. Now I have to look it up and find it because you're going to tell me it's not true.
I'm pretty sure someone on the internet made that up.
No. It was totally a famous, well-known person who said this. I'm going to find it now. If any of you have heard that and you're in my boat, please post it up so that Tom knows I'm not lying.
Mm-hmm. All right. So just a couple quick tips. We gave you the 5 steps, right? And just to help you guys implement it. So first thing is dedicate some time, and
more time than you think you'll need.
Absolutely. And commit to this and know why you're doing it, because as you do this, like especially like you see, if you've ever watched like Hoarders or Marie's show, you see that it's just getting rid of clothing, but most people tend to have an emotional reaction.
Yeah.
And it's because there's usually reasons that things are the way they are. And when you make a change, you're making a change internally as well. So realize that as you go through this process, things might come up, and it might like surface some issues that you weren't aware of before that then come up as you're going through this. Mm-hmm. So just be prepared for that.
Yes, for sure.
And then finally, I think the most important thing, at least for me, is when it comes to work and life, we've mentioned it a couple times, but really make sure you have boundaries. You want your workspace to serve you while you're working, but you also want it to be able to be something that you can step away from when you're in kind of life mode.
Well, and my advice to you as well would be to learn more about yourself. I mean, we've talked about it many times before. We've taken personality tests. So not only do we kind of have an idea of how we were, now we've taken personality tests and can go through and actually see what some of our tendencies are, what some of our differences is. Are you left brain, right brain? Like all of these things that you can learn about yourself will help as you go through this process of optimizing your work environment.
Mm-hmm. All right. So with that, action time. This is a very actionable one, clearly. So my action for you guys is to, if this is something that you want to do, if you want to really set up your work environment to support you, schedule time in your calendar. I would say give it at least a half a day, if not a day, and put it on the calendar to actually start this process. And if you're like me, you'll clear everything out. If you're like Ariana, you may just start with little pieces at a time, but schedule time and commit to doing this, because it's going to be a big benefit for you, not only your productivity, but also your happiness.
Yeah. And my action for this week is going to be for you to make a list of the things that you know put you in the workflow, things that you know motivate you. Maybe it's a certain type of music. Maybe it's a color or a vision of something or a sound or smell. Kind of list that out. Like, here are some of the things in the past that I know get me in the zone. And maybe here are some of the things that relax me and calm me, so that you kind of know as you're going through this process, how are you going to go through, what step was it? Number 3, the shine. Mm-hmm. What are some of those pieces going to be when you get to that step, and you're already going to have a little bit of a leg up?
Absolutely. All right. So if you guys are building a business to create a better life, if you're potentially working at home like we do, and if you're looking to make sure that you're building both of those to support each other, we invite you to become a lifestyle builder. And what is a lifestyle builder, you may ask? I saw it in your eye. You were asking. But basically, Lifestyle Builders is our training community. It is our support community. It is people like you and I that are trying to do this to create a better life for our families and more impact with our customers. And so these are the types of conversations that we have all the time. We actually posted up as we were going through some of this renovations, and it sparked other people to do the same type of thing. And, there's a lot of just support as we were going through that. And actually, one of the people in our community has a giant focus on decluttering. Yep. And she was loving this. She's like, yeah, you guys got to do a podcast episode where it's coming out. But if this is jiving with you, if you guys would like some help on, not only building your business, but make sure you're building it in support of your life, you guys can check that out at joinlifestylebuilders.com.
And our bookshelf for today.
We actually have 2.
Ooh, of course there's 2 because this guy over here. So tell us about The Magic of Tidying, and also, excuse me. Really, and also Spark Joy.
So these are both of Marie Kondo's books. The Magic of Tidying came out a couple years ago.
Who would have guessed?
It came out a couple years ago, and when I first heard about it, I loved it because a lot of it I think it's more the theoretical book, and obviously that's why I loved it.
Of course.
And then Spark Joy came out more recently, and that's what I think really got this new movement of like, decluttering coming out. But both of those books, like I said, the first one really is more the theory. Finding Joy is more the practical steps. Mm-hmm. And if you guys have Netflix, she also has a show on there as well where you kind of see her implement this with families. So those are the 2 books for the day.
All right. It's been another great episode with Tom and Ariana, your hosts and lifestyle builders.
And as always, we want you guys to remember that it's your life, your business, your way. We'll see you next time.
Bye. Hey, we hope you enjoyed this episode. If you know another entrepreneur who may benefit from hearing this show, we would so appreciate you being a good friend and sharing it with them. Are you dreaming of a life of financial freedom and more time to spend with your loved ones? Want to build your business to support that dream? You need Lifestyle Builders, a mentorship program designed to meet you where you are and give you strategic and custom guidance so you can build the business you need for the life you crave. Become a lifestyle builder at joinlifestylebuilders.com. Are you a Lifestyle Builders podcast fan? We'd love to hear from you. Head on over to tomandariana.com/iTunes and leave us a review.